All right, we're going to go ahead and get going. So we get your attention. Thanks for coming, everybody, to the Entrepreneurship Seminar. Today we are fortunate to have Houweling come. Casey is second-generation greenhouse extraordinaire. Took his father's business, which was focused mainly on floral production, is now focused on tomato production and innovative greenhouse technology. So we're excited to have him here. He'll explain a whole lot more, so I'm not going to bore you with my interpretation thereof. But give him a warm welcome. He'll have questions at the end, and if you think of any good ones, write them down and be prepared to ask them. Casey.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here in this part of the country. So I'm probably a little different than most of your speakers that you have up here. I've got a bit of a different background, I would imagine. So, I want you to be kind of open and prepare your questions. I'll try and leave a little bit more time for questions, because I always find that's when the really interesting stuff comes up. Because that's when I really start having to think. Right now I just rattle off, and sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's not. It sounds a bit like a professor to me at the time. So, what we're going to do first is we're just going to play a video which kind of shows you a little bit of a background of the company, of what we do, and then I'll come up and I'll give you a bit of a rundown from how I got involved, how I started, how we progressed, and what some of the challenges were, and everything else that comes to getting to where you are in business, and the risks, and what to do and what not to do. So I know both of them. All right, so thank you.
My name is Houweling. I'm the Propagation Manager at Houweling Nurseries. I've been growing seedlings for 16 years. We offer a special service of healthy, quality seedlings. Our location here in Delta, BC is suited optimally for growing tomato seedlings, peppers, and cucumbers. We're located right on Boundary Bay, on the edge of the Pacific Ocean. And particularly in the summertime, the cool breezes off the ocean give us an ability to deliver a conditioned plant. And one of the things we specialize is delivering plants over long distances, which do need conditioning prior to traveling. Every order we receive in propagation is completely custom. The grower really specifies to us the exact planting date, the number of plants they require, the exact varieties, and the configuration. We work it up together with them before we even place it into the greenhouse. Our staff are capable of engineering a grower's requirements and configuring that into a plant that we can execute from an operation point of view. Consistency and uniformity is important because once it reaches the production house, all of the operations and the tasks that take forward from that point need to be done at the same time. From planting and irrigation and climate control, they can set one strategy as if the entire greenhouse is a complete, uniform, and consistent plant. The tomato plant typically goes through 10 steps of the propagation cycle. The first operation is seeding. The second operation in tomato plant is grading the rootstock. And the third operation is grafting the tomatoes. Then it's transplanting. Transplanting involves taking a grafted plug and putting it into a mineral cube. At that point, they'll be set out to the floor for the next operation, which is staking. Following that, equipment will come in, pick it up, and space it. Spacing is done to the customized specifications set by the grower, right down to the exact amount of plants per square meter. The next step can be pinching. The purpose of pinching is to remove the head of the tomato plant so it breaks out into two branches and creates two stems. The next operation is essentially growing and watering and developing the targeted size and development that the grower has asked for. And then when they approach the delivery stage, the plants will be fastened to a stake with a clip, and the final step is packing them up and putting them onto wagons for transport. We ship tomato seedlings as far as the east coast of North America by air freight, and in truck we travel as long as 3 days, going to southern Texas, Nevada, northern Mexico, California, Alberta, and Colorado. I think what I like most about growing seedlings and working here at Houweling is that we really have a unique opportunity to follow a plant from what seems like an inanimate object, just a naked seed, and germinating it and taking it from there into producing a crop. We see the whole process from the beginning to the end. And we never get tired of watching life begin over and over and over again in the propagation cycle.
All right, is it on? Is the sound on? Okay, good, thank you. So that was our Canadian facility. That's the origin of the company of where it started. That particular greenhouse, as you've seen some of the overheads there, is 50 acres. And the one we have in California, Camarillo, that's strictly a tomato production facility, which just produces tomatoes for the market. That one's 125 acres. And this last one here you see up here, this is just in Bona. That's a 30-acre greenhouse. So this is our last build. So now what I'll do is I'll kind of follow you back a little bit of my story, because I think you might be interested in how that works. So as was said on there, I grew up in this business. So I was the sixth child to Dutch immigrants that immigrated right after the Second World War. Not too dissimilar to some of the heritage in Utah. Basically, it was a period after the Second World War where everyone was within that country was in the Second World War for 5 years and just looked to do one thing, is get out of the war, get it over and done. And then by the time the liberation happened, it was what's next. When you're so focused on one thing and you achieve that, what do you do after that? So that's when a lot of Dutch immigrants immigrated to Canada. It was much more difficult to get to the U.S. And that's where I ended up, in Vancouver, British Columbia, right on the west coast of Canada. Born into, like I said, I was the sixth child. I was born in 1958 to a family that immigrated. My dad and mom and dad immigrated without a penny. So when you start that way, you do a lot of things, and you have to work hard, and you take a lot of risks as you move forward. So he started out landscaping, and then as he built up a little bit of equity, bought some property, and started a small greenhouse on the side while still working and bringing up the family and doing all the other kind of things. So by the time I got to an age where I kind of knew a little bit about what I wanted to do, and that happened pretty quickly. That was like around as soon as I was old enough to think. I never really contemplated doing anything different. The opportunities were there, but in my mind, I never thought there were opportunities. I was destined to become a greenhouse grower person. I think in some ways that's a big advantage, in other ways it isn't. But where the big advantage is, and I've seen it in my own kids, is trying to get the kids to know what they want. I find that that's a huge challenge for today's teenagers. They have so much more than any group or any age group has ever had in the history of this country. Parents have done well, supplied well, and I'm making generalizations. And when you do that, you start a lot higher. It's easier, I would say in my mind, to be an entrepreneur if you start with nothing, because you haven't got nothing to lose. And there's only one way to go, and that's up. So, knowing what I did, when I did, wanted to do was get out of school. School to me was a waste of time. I'm no different now because I've got 3 daughters and all of them. 2 of them are graduated from university and the last one's in university. So it was a different time and a different era. So don't try to repeat what I did because I'll guarantee you'll fail. So I quit school when I was 15. I started working with my dad and that's all I did was work. Ski, I didn't do much else. Just basically worked because I had a goal in mind, and that goal was to improve what my dad had built on and to grow, to have a family where I could provide things for them that my parents couldn't for us. So I did almost everything there is. It started from the very bottom. So today when I look back, I know how to do everything you've seen on the video, the building, the irrigation, everything except for computerization. Some of that other things that are much more difficult for an old guy to learn than me. So after I quit school, like I said, I started growing it, and this was a floral operation. And that's encompasses poinsettias and bedding plants and all other kind of things that are really just sold in grocery stores and all these other retail garden center outlets. Started small, all the way from delivering in the trunk of a car to pick up, and then moved up as we went along and built the business. So by the time I was 20, we had a fair-sized floral operation. My dad was getting to a point ready for retirement, so I bought the company with my brother at 20 years old. And that time, that was the largest agricultural financial deal ever done to a person under 20 years of age in Canada. So it was a big risk for our bank. I really look at how important that is to be able to present yourself and know and give faith to the lenders as you're going forward, because you can't move forward unless you've got capital. So my dad, he was still around, but what he said at his age, he was approaching 65, he said, my life is almost done. You guys have the future ahead of you. I don't want to stop you guys from moving forward, so I'm going to pull out and I'll watch you guys go out and do it. And that was great for him to do, because that's difficult for a lot of people of that kind of age. I'm getting close to that myself. And you think to hand it over to the next generation is not an easy thing to do. But it's essential, because as we get older, we start being more and more careful. And the less risk you take, and that stops growth. And a company that doesn't grow doesn't move forward. Matter of fact, a company that doesn't grow is going backwards, even though you don't know it. The future that you're looking forward to is not the status quo today. And that change is happening more and more rapidly all the time. So if you want to go into a business and you want to maintain where that business is today, it can't be done. Because if you don't change it, it won't last. Some might last a little longer than others, but if you have a retail store and a Walmart store moves in close by, you're done. So you need to be prepared for those kind of huge changes that happen. So after we bought my dad out, my brother and myself, and we continued to grow the business. Leaps and bounds, very aggressively. Worked day and night, and just pushed forward. And when you do those kind of things, you make some mistakes. But in those days, you made a mistake, you turned around, stood back up, and just continued to push forward and move on. Then in 1985, after I made a trip back to Europe and looked at the greenhouse industry over there, I knew where we were, what kind of operation we had, and I'd seen some of the greenhouse vegetable production facilities over there. Much bigger, much more modern than what we were doing in our facility. back in Canada. And I thought, man, if these guys can do that there, why can't they do that? Why can't we do that here in British Columbia? So what I did was I started the vegetable operation and my brother ran the floral operation. We built in those days 6 acres, bought some property, right, that piece of property you've seen up there, we built it. 6 acres first shot, which was the largest greenhouse ever built in British Columbia history. Today, 6 acres is nothing. I mean, somebody looks at you and say, you know what, put together a business plan that has a chance of surviving. But we built that greenhouse and went ahead, and for the first year out of that facility, made $65,000, a mere pittance. But it grew very rapidly after that, and the opportunities were immense because we were first. The risks were huge getting in, but the market was ripe for change. That old gas green tomato that was coming up from Florida in the middle of winter or other times of the year just wasn't cutting it anymore for the increasing demands of the consumer. If you think of it today, back in those days, you know, some 50, 60 years ago, we had seasonality. So we only ate what was available at the time. Peaches you only ate in the summer, you only had strawberries in August, you only had tomatoes in August and September maybe. And in the winter, you ate canned and frozen goods, because that's how you made it through the year. Today, people will buy a tomato Christmas, March, August, any time of the year, walk into a store and expect it and not think twice of how it got there, where it came from. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of the dynamic changes. The gas green Florida tomato is still around, except now there's a lot more coming. Most of it's coming out of Mexico right now. Maybe I'll just say a little bit of things about what a gas green tomato is. It's a tomato that's thick green, so it can last for a long time, thrown into trucks and shipped halfway across the continent. By the time it gets there, they fill the trailer full of gas and make it turn red. So what we grow is only a vine-ripened tomato that's ripened on the vine. Still needs to last through the retail chain and everything, so sometimes the challenge, taste is still a challenge of what you can get in your outside garden, but it's, you know, it's a lot better than what is available from the gas greens of the fields for the rest of the year. So we built that greenhouse. That was 1985 when I started that 6-acre greenhouse. And 2 years later, built another 3 acres, another year, another 6. Basically, by 1993, that facility was 50 acres. And we were growing cucumbers and peppers and tomatoes at that time. It was very successful. But what was happening at that time, and I was sitting on a co-op board that did the marketing for it. And sitting on that board, it became pretty clear to me that there was a challenge coming up for our industry. We were still seasonal producers because Vancouver is dark in the wintertime. The days are shorter, it's further north in here. Not only are the days shorter, but it rains most of the time. So you produce basically up to about November, and then you don't go back into production until March. And that gap was starting to get filled by Mexican greenhouse producers, primarily financed by the Canadian greenhouse sector to fill the gap they couldn't fill, because they created a demand in the industry for a better tomato. And when you do that, the stores demand it 12 months. They're not going to say, okay, well, you're just gone for 3 months and expect to come back. No, they want supply. It's one of the worst things you can do to a retail customer is shorten, don't ship to them. So a lot of the Canadian industry, which had all grown along with us at that time, big center in Leamington, Ontario, and the west coast of Vancouver where we were, did financing and showed the guys in Mexico how to grow to fill gaps. But what that was doing is that was creating competition, because the Mexican field, our greenhouse producers didn't just want to produce in the field. So sitting there on that board, I recognized that and said, we got to go south. So we actually started a greenhouse facility in Mexico. I was down there for 2.5 years on and off. I just flew back and forth in that time period. But the culture was huge, the cultural differences. Working with the government agencies, working with locals and labor and the language and everything else. And also what we were accustomed to. So once I was into it for a year, I talked to the partner that I was with down there and I said, I don't think this is going to work for me. This is just, doesn't fit into my DNA. But he convinced me to stay another year, and so halfway through the next year, a hurricane came in and took the place down, so that kind of sealed the bit for me. So after that, we made a decision to build in Southern California. Same kind of culture as Canada, albeit a little different. But we bought some property just north, kind of halfway between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, and bought 160 acres and built the first 20-acre greenhouse down there and started producing year-round. And that comes also with a whole bunch of challenges. Because growing counter-cyclical, which means that growing in through the winter, planting to grow into the winter is not natural for a plant. You deal with all kinds of different issues. The further south you go, the more pests there is. Then you get Santa Anas, which you guys would know what it is up here in Utah when it's hot and the wind blows. That's what we call it, Santa Ana in California. It only comes when the desert wind comes off and blows out into the ocean. It happens basically between May and October. Huge temperature changes. You can have the hottest day of the year in December with very low humidity. So huge fluctuations in climate making it all difficult. But we worked our way through that. We got through those challenges, and then along came a whitefly plague. Some of you may know the biblical references to the plagues in Egypt. Well, we went through one of those. The only thing we didn't have was Moses to come and correct it, put it to an end. So we had to find our own solution. So I made a trip down to southern Europe, where they were growing year-round, and they were used to dealing with a lot of these things, and every greenhouse down there had insect screens. So we went out, and by this time, that 20-acre greenhouse is now, about 80 acres. So, and those whitefly were devastating, because not only was the pest a problem, but the viruses they carried were a lot worse. So down there, everyone had insect screen to keep the problem outside. So went out and bought insect screen, 122,000 parts of insect screen to cover all the vents in the greenhouse. Huge cost, about $2 million. Went and installed them all. Well, that company we bought them from was a Swedish company. And that company was too busy at that time to manufacture it in its own facility, so subcontracted to an Italian company who invariably forgot to put UV inhibitor in it. And when you don't put UV inhibitor in plastic and it's exposed to the sun, it just kind of like falls apart like a paper towel in the rain. So 6 months later, the problem was back. We went through 2 inner plants, through 2 new clean-out plants, and there we were with a virus and whitefly all over again because all of the insect screen fell apart. Now, I don't need to tell you that for any company, that's devastating. When you go through such challenges like that, and all of a sudden, that nice cash flow that you've seen that went like this is going like this. Your financing runs out, you got to refinance, look for more money. And those challenges almost put us to the edge. But with some hard work and absolute diligence, and this is really where business gets down to, of how good you're going to be. Because anybody can take a hill and be excited going uphill, but when it gets hard and you see the end come and all that work you put into your life go, then you're going to be just about as successful as this guy over here sitting there, 4 rows down from the front. So, did, we filed a, similar to a Chapter 11 in our Canadian company, and I see the other side of bankers. I spent some time on the 24th floor in the Royal Bank building in Toronto, and it was like, at this point I was, man, I'll do the best I can, God, the rest is up to you. Because that's all I could do. That's how I made it through. Just knowing that I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't do the very best and just gave up. We pulled through, got refinanced, got rid of the bank, and then the bank, and I'll just tell you the short story because I could talk about this for a long time. Because we paid our loans off early, because they were refinanced, we got a $1.2 million fee for early payment. So, but that, we made it through the year after that. We had the best year we ever had in history. So we turned it around. But that, for those of you in business, get ready for those things. They happen to everyone. And the difference between success and failure sometimes is the edge of the knife. And just because you fail, you're not a failure. You just, sometimes maybe your timing was wrong, or sometimes you made the wrong judgments. But any business person does. You read about any business anywhere in the world, they've all gone through those kind of tough times. Some tougher than others. And some maybe haven't yet, but let me assure you they will. Even a company the size of Apple has got some huge challenges in front of them. You know, the iPhone is starting to get a little long on the tooth right now. It's pretty hard to come with new innovations. Steve Jobs is no longer there anymore, so what are they going to do now? Now they're going to build an electric car. Who knows what's going to happen with an electric car? That is a huge risk. Maybe they'll pull it off, maybe they won't. But you can't keep building iPhones unless you innovate and come up with something new. That company that they have now, even though it's got billions and billions of dollars in cash reserves, you burn through that in an awful hurry. So we built the rest of the facility up in California up to its full size. And then the energy issue came along. You know, the world was changing, right? Now all of a sudden we're worried about global warming. We're worried about energy, not so much right now that oil's down to like $45 a barrel. Whoever would have thought? Matter of fact, 8 years ago we fixed our natural gas for our California facility at $8.50 a gigajoule, which now is costing us $1.3 million a year because we fixed it. The market today is about $2.50. And we went through the Gray Davis years in California where gas peaked at 52. So you try and mitigate some of the fluctuations in the market, and then you end up calling it wrong. Was that a bad decision? Absolutely was a bad decision. Was it the right decision at the time? Could have been. So that's how easy it is to screw up. But we got that facility up to its size, and then our focus, ever since after that, after the brownouts in California, I started focusing on energy. Because I thought, you know, the next generation after we're there, that time there was the oil peak. You know, the peak production of the oil had topped and was on the downhill curve according to many experts, and I was looking at our reliance on energy. I said, we can't keep on going this way. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for a business. It's not sustainable for the environment. So we started looking at a lot of innovations. We started burning wood in our Canadian facility, started looking at what we could do in the U.S., invested in energy technology, more efficient motors, more efficient heating systems, energy screens to save energy, on and on. Then we looked more at what we're doing of utilizing waste energy. Waste energy is very, very common today in the United States. Anybody who's driving one of those big 4x4s, you know, with the big power and things, uses like 5 times as much fuel as what an economy car does. It's wasting energy. Anytime a power plant is running, 50% of the energy going into that power plant is going out in the form of waste heat. So that's what kind of got me looking into, if we have so much wasted energy in America today, more heat or more energy goes out of our smokestacks than Japan uses. How can we tap that? So what we started looking at was installing generating plants on our sites. So we're the first one in the United States to put in a cogeneration plant to heat a greenhouse in our California facility. Took us 2.5 years to go through the permitting process. We had $20 million investment sitting for 1.5 years doing nothing because we didn't make it through the permitting process. And that's the biggest challenge that you have today. As youth getting into businesses right now, your largest impediment to success is government itself. And I don't say that lightly, because governments have helped a lot, and governments are absolutely essential. But they can, through what it takes right now to get permits and what it takes to get through EPA and a number of other things. And even if you're doing the right thing, that still doesn't matter. If it doesn't fit into that checkbox on there, it can be very, very tough. And if you want to know how tough it is try to build a business in California today. Almost impossible. So we got these, finally got these generators running. They're right now, they produce our heat. We sell electricity into the grid, or we use it ourselves for our own purposes. And we take the CO2 off it, because greenhouses need CO2. CO2 is a big portion of what a plant uses. And outside, you get it from the air. In the greenhouse, there's only so much air available, or air exchanges, so they'll eat that CO2 up. If you've got a healthy crop, within a half an hour, your plants will start slowing down and can come to a complete halt if they don't have CO2. So that helped mitigate the energy. And we were using 50% of our gas to put the electricity into the grid, but the other 50% we were utilizing not only the heat, but the CO2 out of it, which was actually a waste product. So that's like what you would look at, that's a no-brainer, right? But it's expensive. Very expensive to purchase a cogeneration facilities. In our case, they're 24-cylinder, 6,000 horsepower engines. We have 3 of them in California. We've got 2 of them in Canada. Next week we start exporting into the grid. That also took 2 years. And those are huge 2 years of depreciation, of interest, and money being tied up that really inhibit you from moving forward. And most companies wouldn't take those kind of risks. Because when you make those kind of investments, you never know how much it's going to cost or how much time it's going to take. Because government will never tell you that. There's no guarantees, unless you're into a county. That's a different story. Right, Brent? So, why were we looking up here? Because this is the epitome of what we really wanted to do. Tie into a power plant, pull the heat off there, didn't have to generate our own electricity and manage engines and do all that other kind of stuff. So the other thing is Utah doesn't really have agricultural production as most other states do. Not very much tomatoes. So it's a great area to tap into the change in the marketplace today of people wanting to buy local. If you can get a consumer that wants to buy local and support local Utah stuff, that's great if you're a Utah producer, because it gets you a leg up above the other guys. Besides the fact that the produce doesn't have to get shipped halfway across the face of the earth from Mexico to get over here. There's advantages to that. But the disadvantage up here is it gets cold in the winter. I don't think I need to tell you guys that. It gets much colder than what we're used to. California rarely freezes where we are down there. Canada, it does occasionally, but we're right on the ocean, so usually, it's 40 degrees in the wintertime and rainy and dark. And sometimes depressing. Because if you try to grow tomatoes in the dark, that doesn't work too well. So I'm going to kind of keep this thing rolling, because I could talk about this all for a long time. You guys will all get bored. But this is our site in Mona. This was taken the very short period of time it snowed last year between Christmas and New Year's, but it was pretty cold at this time. And even though the county here and the state, you guys have an exceptional state over here. I got nothing but good things to say about the governor, about the way they embrace business, about the Juab County and what those guys have done. We have had our share of difficulties though. We've had some real challenges within the town and getting people to embrace the change. A lot of people just want everything to stay the same. They don't want the traffic, they don't want, you know, all the other things that come with change. Sometimes they don't want change just for the reason not to want change itself. Some of us want everything to stay the same. That doesn't happen. That little baby you have, it's gonna grow up. And you know, it's gonna be nasty to you. It's gonna do, but it's that cuddly stage goes. So, not all of them, sometimes they're good after a while. So we built this thing here. We started building this thing in March, and we had to get the financing through and everything else. And one of the difficulties about this is it's extremely difficult to budget. Because traditionally where we'd always built, we built on flat land and there was no rocks in the soil. Now this, you can see right up here, there's a 35-foot cut, a 35-foot fill, and it doesn't look like that much on the on this photograph, but it's a huge challenge because there's big rocks and all kinds of nasties in it. So that just to level this piece of property alone was $2.3 million. Not only is that expensive, but there's a whole bunch of other costs. See, that $2.3 million you wouldn't have incurred if you'd have built in California or British Columbia, because you just buy flat land. The other thing about out here is there's not much infrastructure. So what I mean by that, there's no water line sitting on the road where you can tap into and pull out, you've got water. The power that you need, in spite of the fact there's a power plant there, still has to come from a substation that's a couple of miles away. And there is natural gas here, but it happens to be at 1600 psi, so it's not like you just drill and tap to get into that. We needed natural gas because we started the process of tying into the power plant at the same time as we started building the greenhouse. We finished the greenhouse in December. We planted this power plant. Right now, what we're doing is, we can go on to the next slide, please. I told you I was going to do your TV remotes. We don't have any. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're trying to do and achieve and how we're tapping into our energy. So see, this is a stack, and we pull this, so there comes a pipe across the road 10 feet into the air, and then comes down here, 22 feet in the air. There's all condensers that extract the heat out of this flue gas, puts it through the condenser, and then it goes this way, and then the remaining, whatever's left, goes out the stack. You'd pull a lot of water out of it, because part of the process of combustion is water. You bring it below the condensate point, and you extract the heat out of there, and then right here, this is where the CO2 gets pulled from this and goes into the greenhouse. These are the backup boilers we have right now. They're running on propane right now. Very expensive, but it's because of the delay in the power plant. And there's a different part. Dealing with something like this is not ag. It's being used for an agricultural facility, but you go through the engineering, you go through contracts that are like 100 pages thick with Pacific Corp, because they want to mitigate risk at every cost. And that means that, you know, every person working in our facility needs $1 million for liability insurance in case something happens to them or they get sick from the flue gases coming across the road, which will never happen. That's just one of the issues, but you got to work through all that, and it's also very expensive. This connection here to this power plant is probably going to cost about $7.5 to $8 million, and we had budgeted $3.5 million. So you'd say, well, how can you be so stupid and budget so low? This you could build for $3 million. The rest of that cost, all paperwork and engineering fees. And then when they did it all, they forgot the seismic, so they had to do it all over again. But it's most of the work, or a lot of the work is done right now. It's in progress, and we will be tied in at the end of the month. We should be operational the first week of December, where we don't need propane anymore, where we can get all the CO2 we need. So the greenhouse has been producing. It's been in producing tomatoes since March, but not the way we wanted to do. Now we're getting close to the goal where we are at. This whole plant was designed though for 4 phases. This is the first phase. We now have roughly 120 people working there, and who knows what's going to happen with the other 3 phases, because after burning through so much equity into this site, we got to crunch down, and we've got to do very well to get that cash position back up. So what I'll do right now is I'm just going to wind this up so that there's some time for questions. And we've only got 10 minutes, so go ahead. Any questions? Yes?
If you were to give 1 minute advice to someone who's going to start their own company, what would it be?
If I can give 1 minute of advice, what would it be if someone wants to start their own company? Well, first of all, you got to be willing to take risk. If you don't want to take risk, don't start. Second of all, make sure that whatever you're doing has a future. So you got to be somewhat innovative, because if you're not, you're going to start competing against others, and you have to have capital. So if you've got those 3 together, 1 minute's not very long, but you have to have passion. You got to be passionate, and make sure that you got time, because you ain't going to do it on 40 hours a week. It needs to fully encompass you, and sometimes that can be difficult in marriages. My wife had a pretty rough time when we first got married, but when I dated her, I told her that business was first and she was second. She still married me. And you know what? I've been around long enough to know that there's other things now in life that are very important to me. My wife is very important to me. My kids are very important to me, and that has changed. But it gives you a bit of an idea of what kind of drive you need to make it go. Have you ever read the book of the biography from Steve Jobs? Read it. That'll help you. Okay, other questions? Yes?
Are you still based out of Canada, or have you moved to the United States?
Our corporate office is in Canada. I live there. One of the reasons is I can't move out of Canada, because Canada has what's called exit taxes. So if I leave Canada, I'd have to sell the business to pay the taxes. So that's another thing in business. You know what? You've got to know, you've got to have good tax planning. You've got to hire the right people. So otherwise, yes, we probably live in California. We have a house in California. My wife loves it down there. She spends the winter down there. I can't spend more than 6 months in the U.S. because as soon as I do that, I lose my Canadian residency status. Any other questions? Yes?
What OSHA laws do you have to be careful around in Utah and California?
Well, if you see what happens at Pacific Corp across the street, there's a safety officer there whenever there's somebody working. And the guy does nothing and just stands there and watches. That's not sustainable. Only a monopoly can afford those kind of overhead charges. Okay, so that helps you a little bit. But the other thing on OSHA is you've got to be careful. You know, and it takes a whole psychological change within a company to be able to deal with that. Of how do you mitigate risks, and how do you do it in a manner that it doesn't inhibit productivity? Because accidents, of course, are very expensive and bad to deal with. And sometimes OSHA laws don't make sense. And that's the problem. You got to check your box. But you got to do it. If you're going to be in business today, unless you've got a few employees and you can work through, you can bypass some of those things, but it comes at a risk. So really, it's, for us now, OSHA doesn't even matter anymore. Because the Walmarts of the world and the Costcos of the world have stricter regulations to their suppliers than the government does. So if you want to supply those, you have to be EFI compliant, or Walmart has their own. They interview your staff to ask how you're treated, make sure you're not bullied, make sure you have the right kind of treatment for employees, and that you do evaluations properly, and 3 strikes you're out, doesn't, firing somebody at the drop of the hat you can't do. So it's a lot of extra paperwork, but if you want to be in business today, it's a changing world. So if you don't want to, if you want to bypass OSHA, maybe you should think about not starting a company. Any other questions? Yes.
Are any of your kids considering following in your footsteps?
I forgot to re-ask this question about OSHA. Did they get that on there? Okay. Are any of my kids want to follow in our footsteps? That's a great question. Because for those of you who have parents and are born in a family where there is a business, don't underestimate the value of getting into a family business, because it gives you that first step off the block. But don't do it if you don't like the business. And don't do it just because it's the easy way out. You want to take over your parents' business or get into a family business? Be prepared to work. What I tell my kids is, if you want to come into the company, remember your last name is Houweling, and that means you have to work harder than everybody else. You need to be an example. Everyone in a company is going to look at you as being that spoiled little kid that's just moving into the corner office. If you take that kind of route, not a good sign. Be prepared to put into it. I have 3 daughters. My oldest daughter is a nurse in Children's Hospital. She loves it. Shifts are awful. She's working all the weekends because she doesn't have any seniority. She still loves it. That's what she was destined to be. She's got that kind of a heart. She's had infants die in her arms. She gets letters from parents telling them how much they appreciated her support through that stage. You need to be a special person to do that. But that's why we're all created differently. Every one of us has different talents. And just because you're born in a family doesn't mean that you have the same talents as your dad may, or mom or dad may in the business. So my next daughter, middle daughter, my oldest daughter, 24. My middle daughter is 22. She graduated school. She out of school, grade 12. We don't have the sophomores and the Fillmores in Canada. We just go from 1 through 12 and keep it simple. She graduated and she said to me, "Dad, I don't really know what to do." She was a dressage rider. She was a top Canadian dressage rider in Canada at that time. That's not really a career. It is for some, but you better have parents with hundreds of millions of dollars, because it's not cheap. So, and you can't make it money. You can't make a living doing it. It's like trying to become an Olympian or whatever it is. So I said to her, don't go to university until you know what you want. Because if you're going to, you're going to go to find it, you're going to waste your time and your dad's money. Not a good combination. So I said to her, work in the company for 2 years. We'll put you through the different departments. And you can see what you like to do, where you fit in, what your niche is. Get an idea of what you really want to do. She worked in the company for 2 years, and she figured it out pretty quick. Very driven. You're not going to make it to a top rider in Canada in massage unless you're driven. So she figured out that she wanted to get into the company. So unlike me, she didn't get in there and stay in there. She was there for 2 years already. Well respected within our organization, I might say, because she worked very hard. And she put a lot into it. Also quite a smart kid. So she went to Pepperdine University. She's just going to finish in May in Pepperdine. She's doing a double major, a major in business and a major in business psychology. Good combination. Because you talked about OSHA and you got staff. Business psychology is a great thing to go into. Because today when you hire people, you got to hire the right people. My biggest challenge in business is hiring the right people. I screwed at it many times. A lot of times when you have to fire people, which is something I absolutely hate doing, it's because you didn't hire the right person in the first place. It's not easy. Probably the most challenging thing in my life has been hiring and identifying the right people. And we've got some great staff, not to say that, but we've had some staff that we've had to kind of weed out. What else? What was the rest of that question? We're done? We're wrapped up? Okay, I'm just gonna make it real quick. All my daughters, the middle daughter, she graduates in May. She's coming into the business. She did the four-year degree in 3 years, went right through the summer. She hates school, by the way, just like her dad. And my youngest daughter, she's in UBC, taking, she's not following any of the advice I give her. She didn't know what she wanted for the first year, and then the second year she went in, she took marine biology, where there's no jobs in. So, but, you know, the youngest kid tends to get their way. So that's it.
All right, thanks again to Casey, and thanks for your time and attention. If you have any further questions, we might be here for a couple more minutes before they get to lunch. So thanks.